Hello, welcome back to Kingdom Portions here on Kingdom in Context. I'm Sean Griffin, accompanied by my lovely wife and co-host.
Hey guys, Shabbat Shalom, I'm Lindsay.
Shabbat Shalom, sweetie.
Shabbat Shalom, babe.
Thank you for joining us here again this week. This week we're going to be working through Genesis 32 through chapters 36. We're going to actually be looking at Simeon and LEvi and what they did in response to Dinah being taken by the Shechem. And I think that's a lot of fun stuff in there that many people may have not realized. We're also going to be looking at chapter 35, which there's something very special in chapter 35, some prophetic foreshadowing that we were excited to see while doing this study. So we're actually going to explain most of that towards the end of the video. Stick around with this. I think you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, it's something that we actually hadn't noticed in chapter 35 ever before.
Yeah.
Until studying it the other day. So
we're excited. All right, welcome back here to Kingdom Portions. This is episode 19, I believe. So we've done wonderful episodes, but I think that this one could be one of the most fascinating. I'm excited about this one because of just some of the fun stuff that we're going to get to in the middle of this portion that's going to go with the pairings. So I'm really excited about it.
I found it extremely edifying, and I really enjoyed the study that we did itself. So, yeah, I'm hoping the episode will be just as edifying as our original study was.
And to the viewer out there, we hope that you guys love it just as much as we do. As always, like, share, and subscribe. If you're edified by what we're doing here, that's the easiest way to help us. Just tap the bell, like, and subscribe to us. Share it on social media if you feel inclined, if it really blessed you, and that you want to get the word out. And in addition, we've actually had people over the last few months contact us asking us how they can support us because they want to see us go and do this full time. And that's actually our prayer, is that we can grow to a place of being able to do this full time. So that's why in the links to this video down below, there's both Patreon and PayPal. I think PayPal's the easiest if you don't have a Patreon account. Some people don't know how Patreon works. It's kind of like social media, Facebook. You got to set up your own profile and everything. But most people just seem to end up using PayPal, I guess. But either way, those are two options for you if God puts it on your heart that you want to bless us. We're not accepting a tithe. We're not Levites. So we want to make that distinction very clear for everyone. All this falls under is Matthew 10, where Yeshua instructed his disciples to go out and preach the gospel of the kingdom of God, to take no money with them because people would bless them out of their generosity if the message was a blessing to them. So that's why, we it's just our heart to do this and to make a full-time ministry out of it. So thank you for prayerfully considering that if that's you. Otherwise, baby, I'm excited to get to this portion because this particular one, although I think, we worked this out to where I have to read the chapters with really hard names in it. But ultimately, and I'm sure that you helped work that out.
No,
right?
I had no idea when I had you start reading in our study. I had no idea my, good blessing that would come from having you start with the first chapter.
So I just want to say ahead of time, guys, once we get to these chapters with a ton of names,
chapter 36
difficult
was
to
brutal.
say. Even if I spoke their own language, I think they would be difficult to say. Just please be patient with me, okay? This is transliterated from Hebrew into English letters, so it's going to sound odd for my vocal speech patterns. But I'll do my best. We're going to start out here in Genesis 32, and I think we're starting here in verse 3.
Yeah.
Genesis 32:3. And then Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He also commanded them, saying, Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban, and stayed until now. I have oxen and donkeys and flocks and male and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord, that I may find favor in your sight. The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We come to your brother Esau, and furthermore he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are coming with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels into 2 companies. For he said, If Esau comes to one company and attacks it, then that company which is left will escape. Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, Return to your country and to your relatives, and I will prosper you. I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and of all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant. For with my staff only I crossed this Jordan, and now I have come back with 2 companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he will come and attack me and mothers with the children. For you said, I will surely prosper you and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which is too great to be numbered. So he spent the night there, and then he selected from what he had with him a present for his brother Esau: 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels, their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He delivered them into the hand of his servant, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass on before me, and put a space between droves." He commanded the one in front, saying, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and to whom do these animals in front of you belong?' then you will say, 'These belong to your servant Jacob. It is a present sent to my lord Esau, and behold, he also is behind us.'" Then he commanded also the second and the third, and also those who follow the droves, saying, "After this manner you shall also speak to Esau when you find him. And you shall say, Behold, your servant Jacob also is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me. And then afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me." So the present passed on before him, while he himself spent that night in the camp. Now he arose that same night, and took his 2 wives, and his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh. So the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." He said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been preserved." Now the sun rose upon him just as he crossed over Penuel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore, to this day, the sons of Israel do not eat the sinew of the hip which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh and the sinew of the hip. Okay, so, sweetie, we've got, something immediately stuck out to me. This isn't really a talking point, but I never heard this before. I didn't know that camels could be milked.
Yeah,
so there was milking. He took the milking camels.
Camels have a split hoof, right?
I believe so.
But do they chew the cud? I'm wondering if they're an unclean animal. Is their milk then unclean? I don't know anything about if camels chew the cud or not. I guess I never really thought about it. But they have a split hoof. You
feed camels straw and grass. Clearly, guys, we're not livestock owners right now at this point in our life. So we haven't really looked up camels, obviously. But but either way, the amount of animals that he gave to Esau is extraordinary. I don't know if you guys were watching during that part. That's a lot of animals. Yeah. A lot of animals, which is why he had to break them up in 4 companies to drive them, 4 different droves. But yeah, what stuck out to you, sweetie?
Well, the first thing is that Jacob seems to be very military-minded in, how he's breaking up these companies of people and, stationing them in certain areas. And that might seem out of place if you aren't familiar with what's going on in the story. But as we know from all these prior weeks that we've been reading, there is a bit of, a battle going on, a bit of what he assumes is going to be a battle. I mean, he hasn't seen Esau since he fled from him at this point, right? So it's been, 20 years?
Last he knew, Esau was trying to kill him.
Exactly.
And now he's been given word that Esau is on his way.
Right.
Right. So he's trying to head off the aggression, with some pleasantries, you know. And can you imagine that? Can you imagine that scene where Esau and his men, 400 of them, are running? They're coming across the landscape. I don't know how far of a distance it truly was. But they're coming across the landscape, and they see in the distance coming up a guy with a bunch of animals. And they're like, "Who are you? Whose animals are these? What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, these are from my lord Jacob to give to you, my lord Esau." He's like, "Man, that's interesting. Yeah. How did you know I was coming, for one? And two, that's a big gift." And then it happens again. And you see another dude with a bunch of herd of animals coming up. And you're like, "Oh, wow." And then you see another and another. And you in 4 different stages. You keep getting stopped on your journey to go kill someone because the guy you're going to kill is trying to give you animals as a peace offering.
He's trying to butter you up.
You know what I'm saying? So all along the way, he has the opportunity to realize, wait a minute, my brother has a lot of livestock. It would be fair to assume at that point that he is a man of means and wealth, which means he could have his own company of men just like I do.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So there's a lot to infer there as far as just what possibly was going through Esau's mind, because, as we're going to read later, what actually happens when you get there.
Right.
So it's very interesting. Also, something that stuck out to me, that, this famous passage here, this is where Jacob wrestles with the man, okay? And although this passage is called the man, later on, it says, what is it, verse
30?
He says, verse 30, so Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I've seen God face to face, yet my life has been preserved. Okay. So in verse 24, it calls him a man, but then Jacob, after this event, he says, I've seen God face to face. So this is where most people would immediately try to inject that this must be a pre-incarnate Yeshua.
Yes.
Okay, but here's the fun part. I'm going to put this up on the screen, guys. The Hebrew word in this passage in Genesis 32:30, when Jacob says, I've seen God face to face, in the English translation, that Hebrew word is Elohim. It does not say I saw Yahweh. It does not say I saw... So this is consistent all throughout Genesis and all throughout Jubilees, what we're even going to read here in our pairings later, is that angels showed up as men.
Yeah, all through the whole Bible, not just Genesis, yeah.
They always showed up as men, okay? And therefore he's calling this thing a god after the event is over. So this is consistent with the same pattern we've seen all throughout Jacob's life and his father's lives. His grandfather, right? Angels show up in the presence of them in the form of a man, and therefore Jacob's even calling this angel Elohim. Now, depending on your translation, it can lead people to be mistaken because they have the generic word G-O-D put into this passage. But when you look in the Hebrew, it's the word Elohim, which is used of not just angels,
right,
but of resurrected mankind.
Yeah.
So this is a status of creation. This isn't a specific name. This isn't like he's saying he saw Yahweh.
Yeah, as we put it, it's a kind of being. We have mankind, we have animal kind, and we have spirit kind. Elohim is spirit kind. And the reason we're explaining this to you guys is because the word God has really been taken and turned into a name for the Father. And when people say God, they mean the Father, they mean Yahweh. Yeah. But God, that is an English translation of this word. He's talking about Elohim, which isn't the name of the Father, as Sean has explained. It denotes a kind of being.
Yeah. In fact, I even did an entire video on this subject.
Yeah.
And it's a Morning Cup of Context. I'll flash the thumbnail up here on the screen if you want to go find it under my Morning Cup of Context playlist here on the channel. And the title of the video is called God Called Jesus God, right? And so how does that happen? How does that work? What's going on there? How can the Father call Jesus God? Is it a Trinitarian ideal? No, I explain in depth in the video. It's actually part of a special playlist, hashtag Son of the Father, that you can find on the channel here in Kingdom in Context, where I've spent 5 full videos breaking down the relationship between the Father and the Son, and I explain what's going on with the Son as far as his location in this moment in Genesis 32. Is this truly him showing up to Jacob? That's what people suspect. That's what people hypothesized over the years. But the scriptures actually tell us something very different, and I go over it in that playlist and in those videos. So go check them out when you have a chance if you're really questioning this topic at that point. But to me, just from the text alone that we have today, I see in verse 24 a man wrestles with him. After it's over, Jacob's kind of surprised he's alive because he knew he just had an interaction with someone that was not a man. And it's called him Elohim, not a specific name. So it's a kind of creature that he had, a kind of creation, which is angelic kind, a spirit kind, as we've talked about. In fact, sweetie, depending on when on my schedule this week, by the time people are watching this, I may have already produced my entire video.
That's our prayer.
Yeah.
That you'll have time
that
to
I'll have
do
the time to do this about the nature of angels, about what the bodies of angels are. What is the spirit kind that we get fleshed out to us, all pun intended. All throughout the Bible, we get the descriptions. Everywhere from Enoch all the way to Yeshua, I mean, everywhere throughout the Bible, we get explained to us what are the bodies of angels. So I'm hopefully by the time you're watching this, I've already been able to release that video this week, and you can quickly reference that as well because it'll be impactful in my opinion.
And if not, stay tuned to our channel for when Sean is eventually able to make that Morning Cup of Context.
If not, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell so you're notified when I put out that video next week. But anything else in this chapter that stuck out to you?
No, I think that's probably sufficient to move on to the next.
Cool. Do you want to read 33?
Yes, I
All the way through 36?
No, thanks. I'll stick with 33. You guys will understand when we get there.
Just wait.
All right, so starting in chapter 33. Then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 maids. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. He lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, "The children whom God has graciously given to your servant." Then the maids came near with the children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise came near with her children, and they bowed down. And afterward Joseph came near with Rachel, and they bowed down. And he said, "What do you mean by all this company which I have met?" And he said, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own." Jacob said, "No, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand. For I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please take my gift, which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty." Thus he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us take our journey and go, and I will go before you." But he said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. And if they are driven hard one day, all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass on before his servant, and I will proceed at my leisure, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord at Seir." Esau said, "Please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built for himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the place is named Succoth. Now Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram and camped before the city. He bought the piece of land where he had pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected there an altar and called it El Elohe Israel.
All right. Thank you, sweetie.
Yeah.
So this passage here, first thing that stuck out to me that I thought was wild. Did you see how Jacob arranged his family when they were
I
going to
have
Esau?
seen that every time I read that chapter.
Oh my goodness. So I'm trying not to be too cruel, but try to figure out the inferment here of like, okay, so at first thought, when we're doing our study, I was like, man, he's showing some crazy favoritism to Rachel and Joseph.
Yeah.
But then I thought, okay, well, if we remember from Genesis, I think it was 31 or chapter 30, Joseph was born last. Mm-hmm. Benjamin's not been born yet. So Joseph was born last. He could still be a baby at this moment, and therefore maybe he was like, okay, well, I got to put, and the baby's going to be with his mom, which was Rachel, so maybe I got to put them at the very last because they're the most delicate, right? They need the protection the most. So
I don't know. Leah was the first one to have children, and she was still behind the 2 maids.
Yeah. It's very interesting. We're trying not to be...
Nothing bad happened, and, by the grace of God, everything, the reconciliation was, as he originally wanted. The peace offerings were accepted, and, no one was harmed in that incident. But the way he organized that, I mean, it's a little suspicious.
It's funny. Well, we already know from previous chapters from last week, he loved Rachel.
Yeah,
he did. Like I said, we may get to it in future portions, but Jubilees does tell us later that after Rachel dies, that Jacob loved Leah for the rest of his life, and that he didn't remarry anybody else.
Yeah,
and that he
sounds like they finally became. It sounds like sadly, she finally got the attention and love from him that she had desired all those years.
Yeah.
Once Rachel was out of the picture, unfortunately. Ugh.
But in one regard, I guess the reason why I mentioned that again this week is because it just lets us know, even though he did want Rachel originally, kind of got tricked with the whole, him not understanding their custom and everything. But at the same time, once Rachel was not around anymore, he just didn't treat Leah disrespectfully.
He honored Leah.
He loved her
with
all of his heart and his soul, as Jubilees tells us later. And Leah, I would have only imagined at that moment, was happy and felt loved, right? Because she felt unloved last week.
And Jubilees, doesn't it make a statement something along the lines of, and she never spoke a harsh word to him in her whole life?
That's
here we have Rachel saying, "Give me children or I'll die," So
she did have a good heart. She had a good attitude.
Maybe she had that meekness and that humility that Rachel might not have possessed.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But that's just another another reason why I love Jubilees.
Yeah.
It gives us little bitty tidbits of information like that you're like, this is the kind of stuff. Because, I'm an aspiring writer, and I think from this perspective of, okay, here's a character that there's some things with this character that's not being addressed, but man, Jubilees addresses it. You're like, oh, well, that makes sense that you would talk about that, because this was a huge glaring pothole in Genesis.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's just a good compliment to Genesis. Sukkot.
Yes, we have the first mention of the name Sukkoth, however you want to pronounce it, but that is what it sounds like. And he built booths there.
And he named the place Sukkot.
Yes.
because he built booths there, which I think is amazing. Because to me, in my opinion, we get, even later on in this, some of the account that we're not going to be pairing this year because we didn't have time.
Yeah.
But later on in the pairings of Jubilees, around this moment in Jacob's life, specifically in this moment in Jacob's life, he actually receives some tablets from angels from heaven, and they actually tell him prophecies about what's going to happen to him and his sons and his descendants throughout the end of the age. And as a result of that, he wants to build the tabernacle.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, tune in next year as we go into that part of it. But because, like I said, we have to be very careful with what we choose, because we only have so much time to do this, and we got to get through these portions and pairings and everything.
Yeah.
So, but next year we'll go over all that, because to me, this is why he would understand why he would even call that place booths. Right. But that was so significant. Abraham celebrated the Feast of Booths. It was a feast and a festival that was already passed down to him, to Jacob as well. And as a little side note, guys, if you want to have some real fun with this, if you go into my channel here at Kingdom of Context, I've got a video called 24 Parallels with the Exodus and the Second Coming. And I'll try to find the thumbnail how I put it up on the screen for you. Yeah, the Passover that happened at the beginning of the Exodus, and parallel that with the Second Coming. And what's fascinating is, as soon as they left the Passover in Exodus, as soon as they left, the first place they went was Sukkot. It was this little Egyptian town named Sukkot, which I think is fascinating. There's so much prophetic symbolism going on in the scriptures, which is actually a little bit of something we see here in Genesis 33 as well. What happens? Two brothers reconcile, and then the whole family, or at least Jacob and his whole family, goes to Sukkot, goes to the booth, right? Yeah. So if the New Jerusalem is our big booth, at the resurrection, all brothers are made at peace with each other because we're given the heart of Yahweh. And then we're taken to the big booth, the New Jerusalem. There's some fun little symbols. Yeah,
we have the Ezekiel 2 sticks, being made back into one imagery there. So,
yeah, it's a lot of beautiful stuff. Okay, I guess it's my turn. We'll get to 35 or 34. And then we'll pick up here in Genesis 34. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivites, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her, and he lay with her by force. He was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved her. He loved the girl, spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young girl for a wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. But his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept silent until they came in. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it. The men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. For such a thing ought not to be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be open before you. Live and trade in it, acquire property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "If I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give according as you say to me. But give me the girl in marriage." But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. They said to him, "We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, if you will become like us, in that every male of you be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go." Now their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. The young man did not delay to do the thing, but because he delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more respected than all the household of his father. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city, and spoke to the men of their city, saying, These men are friendly with us. Therefore let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughter in marriage and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to live with us, and to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us. All who went out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of the city. Now it came about on the third day, when they were in pain, that the two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the city unawares and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went forth. Jacob's son came upon the slain and looted the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks, their herds, their donkeys, that which was in the city, and that which was in the field. They captured and looted all their wealth, and all their little ones and their wives, even all that was in their houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And my men, being few in number, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed in my household. But they, Simeon and Levi, said, Should he treat our sister as a harlot? Okay. So this particular passage has always caused me to raise an eyebrow. Because okay, man, there's so much in here.
I just gotta say, if you're ever a little sister, you definitely want big brothers like that that are, definitely not gonna play around with anyone messing with you. I mean, that's pretty serious.
Like it said, they answer them with deceit, right? With cunning, saying that let's get them physically impaired, and then while they're trying to recover, we'll take advantage of them. What's interesting here in verse 4, where Shechem says to his dad Hamor, he's like, "Hey, get me this young girl for a wife." So, just in case you guys are not aware, we're going to actually stick around with this for a minute, because we're going to get to our pairings in Jubilee, where we read part of this portion as well, and it actually tells us how young Dinah actually was.
Right.
So this is not. You'll see what we're talking about.
Right, because this is also another situation where, much like Rebecca and Jacob have for all this time kind of been labeled as deceivers because of the blessing issue. It's very similar here with Levi and Simeon, where you'll hear a lot of teachers talk about the horrible act that Levi and Simeon engaged in and how that was evil. But then, just like we have Jacob being blessed after his so-called deception, we have Levi. Look, guys, the Levitical priesthood is called Levitical because it's named after Levi. So we have Levi receiving a blessing even after what happens here. So you're going to get a lot more context.
Stick around to the end, guys. We're going to flesh out what she was talking about a little bit more once we get to the pairings and everything, so that you can understand that's another point I was going to bring up, was the fact that you see a little bit of disagreement. And not that Jacob was saying that she shouldn't be, that vengeance shouldn't have taken place for the crime that was done, but the way it was carried out by Simeon and Levi, Jacob was become afraid, right? And that's just natural human emotion. But we hear Simeon and Levi, they just don't care. They're just like, look, they defiled our sister. What would you have us do? Yeah. But here's the thing: there's a Torah law. So these guys, they're just following their own statutes. They're following their own commands, which is the guy who takes a woman by force deserves death. Was it Deuteronomy 24, I think? We'll have to go find the exact verse. But, I mean, it was a big deal. You just couldn't do that. It wasn't customary in any culture, in my opinion. But definitely, but what I think is fascinating is that so we got this set up here. We got, the young prince of the land, this guy named Shechem, apparently whom the town was named after. So Shechem goes, he sees this young girl, he takes her, he lays with her by force. The young girl's family finds out. So then Hamor, Shechem's dad, is like, I need to go, do some damage control here, right? So he goes over to Jacob and the sons, and he's trying to talk to him. And it doesn't say it in the text, but Hamor has his son with him, Shechem, because Shechem starts talking a little bit later. But what's fascinating is that Hamor is promising Jacob and his sons things that they already have. So he's saying, look, let this be okay. let us keep your daughter.
Yeah.
By the way, they still hadn't gotten the daughter back
Yeah.
yet. We're going to go over that as well in a minute. But he's saying, let us keep your daughter. And you can live here. You can trade here. You can acquire property here. Well, guys, we just read in the previous chapter that when they moved there, they bought a piece of property. They were already living there. They were already at peace. They were already going to be trading there, I'm sure.
Right.
But before, like, it's so funny that this guy who's trying to cover for his son's mistake, he comes in and he's like, he has nothing to really bargain with.
Right.
And so the only thing that comes out of his mouth is stuff that they already have access to.
Right.
It's just such a weak bargaining chip. It's laughable, in my opinion. And of course, we have these Simeon and Levi. I'm excited to meet these guys when we get to the kingdom, okay? Yeah. Because, especially Levi. But I think that, and especially if we can believe Jasher, the things that it says that Simeon does, apparently he had like a shout that was so loud that it put fear in men's hearts. Like it would just literally, they would just not want to fight him immediately because just his shout was so intimidating. But again, we sometimes talk about this book of Jasher, which has additional details, but we don't really parrot and quote from it because there's some things in there we're still testing. Yeah. Okay, so, but I find it fascinating that the brothers were like, okay, look, they hear this guy talking a bunch of noise that he's no bargaining chip. He's just talking, right? He's trying to save his son from the bad act his son did. And they're just like, sure. We'll do this if you guys do this for us.
Yeah.
And they're just immediately setting this guy up. Yeah. And it's just like, it's very, very smart. It's very smart.
Yeah.
Anything else, babe, in this chapter that stuck out to you?
No, I think we're going to get to, most of it once we get over to the Jubilees pairing, because that's got all the real details going on.
Do you want to pick up 35?
Yes, I shall.
All right.
Chapter 35. Then God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and live there, and make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and to all who are with him, "Put away the foreign gods which are among you, and purify yourselves, and change your garments, and let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods which they had, and the rings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was near Shechem. As they journeyed, there was a great terror upon the cities which were around them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. He built an altar there and called the place El Bethel, because there God had revealed himself to him when he had fled from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried below Bethel under the oak. It was named Allon Bakuth. Then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Paddan Aram, and he blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." Thus he called him Israel. God also said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come forth from you. The land which I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I will give it to you, and I will give the land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. So Jacob named the place where God had spoken with him Bethel. Then they journeyed from Bethel, and when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, and she suffered severe labor. When she was in severe labor, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for now you have another son." It came about as her soul was departing, for she died, that she named him Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a pillar over her grave. That is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. Then Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. It came about while Israel was dwelling in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Now there were 12 sons of Jacob, the sons of Leah. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, then Simeon and Levi and Judah and Issachar and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. And the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maid, Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre of Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years, and Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, an old man of ripe age, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him.
Wow. So, this is a fun chapter, guys. This is a big chapter. And because of the nature of this chapter and what's in it, we're actually going to have some special slides prepared that we're going to review about this chapter that we're going to go over at the end of this video.
Yeah.
Because we want to get through 36 and then get to our parents, so that once we come back to 35 at the end of the video, it's all going to make great sense.
It's going to circle back around
to
the kingdom like we always
and it's going to be, in my opinion, amazing. There's some amazing prophetic foreshadowing in here, and it just blew my mind.
It hit us while we were reading this the other day together, and I don't know how many times I listen to audio Bible at work all the time. I don't know how many times I've listened through Genesis and read through it, done the Torah portions on it, and just did not notice this until now.
It's so much fun. Stick with us, guys.
Yeah, please stay with us till the end, because you're going to hopefully really be edified by this. And chapter 35 of Genesis might suddenly be more significant to you than it was before. It certainly is for us now.
It is. Yeah, such a random little chapter.
Yeah.
All right, babe. I'm going to get into 36.
Warm up your vocal cords. Get ready, babe.
Try to practice the tongue twisting exercises.
Do a little do re
Peter
mi.
Piper picked a pack of peppers. I don't know. I can't do it. All right, so I'm going to get into 36, guys.
I mean, we might as well just throw some marbles in your mouth, actually, and just blah, 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 because that's what it's going to sound like. Be merciful, guys.
And it's not even a short chapter.
I know.
Okay. All right. We love our Father's Word. We're reading it.
We do. Yes. Okay. We're going to go through all of it. This is not a chapter we're just going to skip.
Genesis 36:1. Now these are the records of the generations of Esau, that is Edom. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan. Ada, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Oholibama.
You had it yesterday. Oholibama.
Oholibama. I have to sing it, actually, to say it. I don't understand. The daughter of Anah and the granddaughter of Zibeon the Hittite. Also, Basemath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Nebaioth, and Ada bore Eliphaz to Esau, and Basemath bore Ruel. And Oholibama bore Jeush and Jalam and Korah. These are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. Then Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all his household and his livestock and all his cattle and all his goods which he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to another land away from his brother Jacob. For their property had become too great for them to live in, and the land where they sojourned could not sustain them because of their livestock. So Esau lived in the hill country of Seir. Esau is Edom. These are the records of the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, the son of Esau's wife, Ada; Ruel, the son of Esau's wife, Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz were Timon, Omar, Zepho, and Gatam, and Kenaz. Timnah was a concubine of Esau's son, Eliphaz, and she bore Amalek to Eliphaz. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Ada. These are the sons of Ruel: Nahath and Zerah, Shammah and Mizah. These were the sons of Esau's wife, Basemath. These were the sons of Esau's wife, Oholibama, the daughter of Anah, and the granddaughter of Zibeon. She bore to Esau Jeush and Jalam and Korah. These are the chiefs and the sons of Esau, the sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn of Esau, are Chief Timon, Chief Omar, Chief Zepho, Chief Kenaz, Chief Korah, Chief Gatam, Chief Amalek. These are the chief descended from Eliphaz in the land of Edom. In the land of Edom. These are the sons of Ada. These are the sons of Ruel: Esau's son, Chief Nahath, Chief Zerah.
Halfway there, babe. Halfway there.
Okay, we're almost there. Okay.
You're doing all right.
Chief Shammah, Chief Mizah. These are the chiefs descended from Ruel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Basemath. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Oholibama: Chief Jeush, Chief Jalam, Chief Korah. These are the chiefs descended from Esau's wife, Oholibama, the daughter of Anah. These are the sons of Esau, that is Edom, and these are their chiefs. These are the sons of Seir the Horite, the inhabitants of the land: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anah, and Dishon, and Ezer, and Dishan. These are the chief descendants from the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Himam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. These are the sons of Shabal, Alvan, and Manahath, and Ebal, and Shepho, and Onam. These are the sons of Zibeon: Aiah, I don't even know how to say it. I'm just spelling it out. And Anah, he is the Anah who found the hot springs. So wait, Anah was is this a different Anah than the first one? I thought Anah was a woman.
It must be a different one if it's saying he now. Just
okay,
keep
so
going. You're almost there.
He is the Anah who found the hot springs in the wilderness when he was pasturing the donkeys of his father Zibeon. These are the children of Anah, Dishon, Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah. These are the sons of Dishon, Himdan, Eshban, Ithran, Keran. These are the sons of Ezer, Bilhan, Zavan, and Achan. These are the sons of Dishan, Uz, and Aram. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites, Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, Chief Anah, Chief Dishon, Chief Ezer, and Chief Dishan. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites, according to their various chiefs in the land of Seir. Now these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the sons of Israel. Bela, the son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. Then Bela died, and Jobab, the son of Zerah of Basra, became king in his place. Then Jobab died, and Husham of the land of the Timonites became king in his place. Then Husham died, and Hadad, the son of Bedad, who defeated Midian in the field of Moab, became king in his place, and the name of his city was Avit. Then Hadad died, and Samlah of Mazrakah became king in his place. Then Samlah died, and Shaul of Rehoboth on the Euphrates River became king in his place. Whew. Then Shaul died, and Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbar, became king in his place. Then Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbar, died, and Hadad became king in his place. And the name of his city was Peu, and his wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, daughter of Mezahab. Now these are the names of the chiefs descended from Esau, according to their families and their localities. By their names, Chief Timnah, Chief Alva, Chief Jehet, Chief Oholibamah, Chief Elah, Chief Pinon, Chief Kenaz, Chief Teman, Chief Mizbar, Chief Magdiel, Chief Iram. These are the chiefs of Edom, that is Esau, the father of the Edomites, according to their habitations in the land of their possession.
Congratulations.
All right, so we're going to take a concession break.
Yeah.
And, no, I'm just playing. I'm just playing.
20-minute intermission, guys.
Cool. So there's, and it's chapters like these where I remind myself that Genesis is encoded numerically. There's some really fun stuff in there. So all those names, we get descendants of the Horites, the Edomites, all these people that we don't really hear ever again.
Yeah.
Right? They're in there for a purpose. Absolute purpose. And, it's just our discipline to be able to read them. But thanks for bearing with me through that, folks.
Yeah, we don't have much to say on this particular chapter.
No, this won't be our focus this year.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future if we ever dig into the Horites genealogy or in the Edomites. But as we did a couple weeks ago, we already dug into Obadiah, which kind of verifies that Esau did go to live in this land,
right.
And everything. So either way, yes, let's get to our pairings. Right. I'm excited about it. And this is, I'm excited about our Jubilees pairing because we're going to get back into the story of Dinah from Genesis 34. We get it fleshed out for us with great detail. And the angel who's giving this message to Moses, who's explaining this story to Moses, actually starts explaining to him all kinds of other things surrounding this particular story, right. Which is why, we talked a couple weeks ago, we're like, all these sons of Jacob are being born, and the mother's giving them these special meanings to their names, when they're being born. But, and by the way, Dinah was born too. And it seems like she's all left out. There's not a big deal. Actually, no, a lot surrounds this only daughter of Jacob, right? Yeah. At this point. And so I think that we're going to get a lot of fun stuff in Jubilees 30. So. Yeah,
it sounds like her brothers loved her. At least two of them. It sounds like she wasn't just, just the daughter. I mean, I'm sure she was probably doted on a bit.
Well, that's
being the only girl,
being the baby girl, and that's what we're about to read about her age as well. So, and we see why what Shechem did was so egregious. Yeah. So here we are in Jubilees chapter 30, verse 1. In the first year of the 6th week, he went up to Salem, to the east of Shechem, in peace in the 4th month, and there they carried off Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, into the house of Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land. And he lay with her and defiled her, and she was a little girl, a child of 12 years. And he besought his father and her brothers that she might be given to him to wife. And Jacob and his sons were wroth because of the men of Shechem, for they have defiled Dinah, their sister, and they spoke to them with evil intent, and dealt deceitfully with them, and beguiled them. And Simeon and Levi came unexpectedly to Shechem, and executed judgment on all the men of Shechem, and slew all the men whom they found in it, and left not a single one remaining in it. They slew all in torments, because they had dishonored their sister Dinah. And thus let it not again be done from henceforth, that a daughter of Israel be defiled. For judgment is ordained in heaven against them, and that they should be destroyed with the sword, all the men of the Shechemites, because they had wrought shame in Israel. And the Lord delivered them into the hands of the sons of Jacob, that they might exterminate them with the sword, and execute judgment upon them, and that it might not thus again be done in Israel, that a virgin of Israel should be defiled. And if there is any man who wishes in Israel to give his daughter or his sister to any man who is the seed of the Gentiles, he shall surely die, and they shall stone him with stones, for he has wrought shame in Israel. And they shall burn the woman with fire, because she has dishonored the name of the house of her father, and she shall be rooted out of Israel. Let not an adulteress and no uncleanness be found in Israel throughout all the days of the generations of the earth. For Israel is holy unto the Lord, and every man who is defiled it shall surely die. They shall stone him with stones. For thus it has been ordained and written in the heavenly tablets regarding all the seed of Israel, he who defileth it shall surely die, and he shall be stoned with stones. And to this law there is no limit of days, and no remission, nor any atonement, but the man who has defiled his daughter shall be rooted out of the midst of all Israel, because he has given his seed to Molech, and wrought impiously so as to defile it. And do you, Moses, command the children of Israel, and exhort them to not give their daughters to the Gentiles, and not to take for their sons any of the daughters of the Gentiles, for this is abominable before the Lord. For this reason I have written for you in the words of the law all the deeds of the Shechemites, which they wrought against Dinah, and how the sons of Jacob spoke, saying, We will not give our daughters to a man who is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us, and it is a reproach to Israel, to those who live, and to those who take the daughters of the Gentiles, for this is unclean and abominable to Israel. And Israel will not be free from this uncleanness, if it has a wife of the daughters of the Gentiles, or it has given any of its daughters to a man who is of any of the Gentiles. There will be plague upon plague, and curse upon curse, and every judgment and plague and curse will come upon him, if he does this thing, or hide his eyes from those who commit uncleanness, or those who defile the sanctuary of the Lord, or those who profane his holy name. Will the whole nation together be judged for all the uncleanness and profanation of this man? And there will be no respect of persons, and no consideration of persons, and no receiving at his hands of fruits and offerings, and burnt offerings and fat, nor the fragrance of sweet savor, so as to accept it, and so fare every man or woman in Israel who defiles the sanctuary. For this reason I have commanded you, saying, Testify this testimony to Israel. See how the Shechemites fared, and their sons, how they were delivered into the hands of 2 sons of Jacob, and they slew them under tortures, and it was reckoned unto them for righteousness, and it was written down to them for righteousness. And the seed of Levi was chosen for the priesthood, to be Levites, that they might minister before the Lord as we continually, and that Levi and his sons may be blessed forever. For he was zealous to execute righteousness and judgment and vengeance on all those who rose against Israel. And so they inscribe as a testimony in his favor on the heavenly tablets blessing and righteousness before the God of all. And we remember the righteousness which the man fulfilled during his life, at all periods of the year, until 1,000 generations they will record it, and it will come to him and to his descendants after him, and he has been recorded on heavenly tablets as a friend and a righteous man. All this account I have written for you, and I have commanded you to say to the children of Israel, that they should not commit sin, nor transgress the ordinances, nor break the covenant, which has been ordained for them, that they should fulfill it, and be recorded as friends. But if they transgress and work uncleanness in every way, they will be recorded on the heavenly tablets as adversaries, and they will be destroyed out of the book of life. They will be recorded in the book of life. They were recorded in the book of those who will be destroyed, and with those who will be rooted out of the earth. And on the day when the son of Jacob slew Shechem, a writing was recorded in their favor in heaven, that they had executed righteousness and judgment and vengeance on the sinners, and it was written for a blessing. And they brought Dinah, their sister, out of the house of Shechem, and they took captive everything that was in Shechem, their sheep, their oxen, their asses, all their wealth, all their flock, and brought them all to Jacob their father. And he reproached them because they had put the city to the sword, for he feared those who dwelled in the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And the dread of the Lord was upon all the cities which are around about Shechem, and they did not arise to pursue after the sons of Jacob, for terror had fallen upon them.
Man, I love that chapter.
Yes.
I love it.
I love it for a couple different reasons. There's some big stuff in here. All right, first off, right off the bat, guys, Dinah was 12.
Yeah.
12 years old, okay? It's a child.
Yeah.
A child. Okay.
Yeah.
We're not even talking like a.
She wasn't even a woman yet.
Yeah, not even a blossoming late teen or nothing
Yeah.
like that. No, a child. She was straight up a child. So this, what does this remind you of? All these kids always getting kidnapped by occultists, by Satanists.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we get a mention here that the Canaanites were following Molech,
Right.
which are Satanists.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So it wouldn't surprise me to see the same kind of behavior still going down way back then, where you got kids being abducted, because as we saw both in Genesis chapter 34, but also here, at the very beginning it says they took her.
Yeah.
Okay,
They
so
carried
this
her
is
away.
in verse 2. They carried Dinah off, the daughter of Jacob. But then we had to go all the way down to, what was it? We had to go all the way down to the end of the chapter to see that they, after they killed everybody, got her back.
Right.
So this whole time that this story's playing out and all this conversations going on between Shechem, Hamor, and Jacob and his sons, Dinah's still in Shechem's household.
Yeah.
She's literally been
being
kidnapped.
held captive.
She's been kidnapped. Okay, so this isn't just this is a dude taking a girl off the street or out of the field or something, taking her back to his house, raping her, and then going to the father and saying, "Hey, let me keep her." No, you can't see her.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure. We only get so much information in each account of the story, but it sounds like the sons had much more zeal to go, and they're much angrier about what's going on than Jacob seems to be in these passages, and it might have to do with him being afraid of the inhabitants of the land, and maybe he was trying to work something out with them where he didn't go kidnap her back, but we see clearly Levi and Simeon were definitely empowered with the zealousness to, go and execute judgment is the phrase used here.
That's right.
In Jubilees, which I love, because even though it doesn't say anything about what they did as being wrong in Genesis, I hear a lot of teachers teach that what they did was wrong and brash and because of how Jacob felt about it, they assume that means that God wasn't pleased with what they did.
No, I think it's verse 15 is what Jacob or according to Jubilees in this chapter here in verse 15 of Jubilees 30, I think could have been the motivating reason behind Simeon and LEvi sitting there going, no, we got to take care of these dudes, because I'm going to read again real quick for you guys. For there will be plague upon plague, curse upon curse, every judgment and plague and curse will come upon him if he does this thing or hides his eyes from those who commit uncleanness, or those who defile the sanctuary of the Lord, or those who profane his holy name. Then will the whole nation together be judged for all the uncleanness and profanation of this man.
Yeah.
So to allow their father to not act would have made their whole family guilty of this thing. And the whole group of men who consented to what Shechem did are now complicit in that crime, according to what we just read here as well.
It made the whole nation
That's
guilty of it, and that's why everyone suffered the punishment of that.
Which is what we read up here. I think it's in verse 12. It says, for this reason I've written, this is the angel telling Moses, for this reason I've written for you in the words of the law all the deeds of the Shechemites, which they wrought against Dinah, and how the sons of Jacob spoke. We will not give our daughter to a man who is uncircumcised, for their reproach unto us. I think that isn't exactly, I can't remember exactly which verse it was, but the point is they're acknowledging a big issue here. This wasn't simply they're mad because their sister, some dude likes their sister.
Yeah.
Okay, she's kidnapped, she's raped, way underage, and she's even knows if it's their consent, because they won't let her come back home.
Right. Well, what we see here then is it goes into all this detail of the law throughout the generations, and how this basically is the start of the standards for the daughters of Israel.
That's right.
So, because we know Israel only had one daughter, the man, Jacob. He only had one daughter. But we know a lot more daughters are going to eventually be born of his seed. And so this is where we have the standard set of not marrying your daughters into the heathen nations around you. Yeah.
And what's fascinating to me is that, again, we maybe in the future we'll have to do a special investigation series into the book of Jasher itself.
Yeah.
But man, if the book of Jasher is real and what it claims in there is valid, then this moment here in Genesis 34 kicks off an entire military campaign by the sons of Israel into many different Canaanite cities. And this is at the end of this, just like in Genesis, at the end of Jubilees 30, they both say all the other cities, the terror and dread fell upon them, because that's why no one attacked them when they left Shechem and went down to Bethel.
Yeah.
Right? No one attacked them. They were like, whoa, the 2 dudes just took out a whole city. We're not going to mess with those guys.
Yeah.
They got 9 other brothers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, who are these guys?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so I think that in the book of Jasher, it says they went on a conquest of Canaan, just like we see after the Exodus. But it was just the sons of Israel.
That's
and
interesting.
they're taking out city by
incredible
city.
Movie series.
Oh my goodness! At one point, it says they fought for 6 days straight, and the only reason they stopped was to observe Sabbath. Think about that.
Huh.
And at one point, they had apparently there's like a city that was more like a castle like description, and it was holed up, and they were like the inhabitants of the city were afraid. Were just trying to lock the doors and keep them out. And they. And God was giving them like Samson-like powers throughout this event, and that they were just overcoming giants. They were overcoming all the inhabitants of the land that were trying to, kill them. And they basically just did a huge clearing, spring cleaning, if you will, of the land of Canaan as a result of this, because this kind of kicked off a much bigger conflict in the area. And so because again, just keep this with a grain of salt and test the book of Jasher for yourself. The book of Jasher claims that in this moment with the Shechemites, that they agreed to the circumcision, but other Canaanite city leaders came by to Hamor and to Shechem and said, "What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
How are y'all getting into covenant with Israel? You're not supposed to do that."
Yeah, they were appalled that the Shechemites were going to be circumcised.
And they threatened to kill the men of Shechem if they went into covenant with Israel. Therefore, the men of Shechem were like, well, just let us go through this circumcision thing, and then once Dinah is ours, we'll kill Jacob and his sons.
Yeah.
And it was a servant that was given to Dinah, and then Dinah sent this servant girl with a message to Jacob, her father, saying, "Oh, I overheard what they're planning to do to you. They're planning to betray you and try to kill you guys after the marriage."
Which would be what Genesis and Jubilees are referring to when they vaguely mention that they were being deceitful with Jacob and his sons. So we don't have, any explanation of what exactly that means in either of these two, versions of the story. We do have an explanation for that in Jasher.
And it's a very valid explanation. And it fully venerates everything Simeon and Levi did, and it fully would understand why Jubilees is calling what Simeon and Levi did righteousness.
Right.
And it actually says that because of this, Levi is chosen to give the priesthood.
Right, which we're going to get into that with our next pairing. And this is why this is important for people to understand, okay? There has been a negative connotation to the Levitical priesthood and the sacrificial system for pretty much, the last 2,000 years of teaching that system was done away with. There has been a teaching that has formed around this idea that's even crazier than some of the stuff we've talked about before, where it basically says that the Levitical priesthood was a punishment upon Israel because of the sin of the golden calf. They were punished with the Levitical priesthood.
That is not scripture.
And these people teach that the priesthood didn't even exist until 430 years after Abraham. It first started on Mount Sinai when the law was given to Moses, without ever realizing the fact that the priesthood is named after Levi, who we know long before Mount Sinai. Yeah. So I had to ask myself, why is it called the Levitical priesthood? We don't get any of that backstory. In Genesis, we have Malachi tell us a little bit about the covenant that was made with Levi. Mm-hmm. We have Jeremiah 33 mentioning that covenant is going to be restored. I mean, that priesthood is going to come back. That's part of the promise God made to Levi. But we don't have the actual starting point of when that priesthood, came to be and why it was given. And what we see here is it was a blessing. It was a great thing. Levi was rewarded for his righteousness. His name was written on the heavenly tablets for what he did.
As a friend of God.
And all his generations were promised this priesthood. It's a blessing, guys. It's not a curse that was imposed on Israel because of the golden calf.
You just want to test every. Same with us, guys. There's other people out there that would love to explain scripture to you, but that doesn't mean they're doing it well.
Right.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, this is kind of what motivated us over time to realize, good Lord, there's some bad teachers out there, and Father, help us with the words to say, because we found ourselves being approached almost daily
Yeah.
on social media, because we would start seeing these bad teachings being passed around. We would offer scripture as rebuttal to say, whoa, this teacher's forgetting this portion of scripture and this large portion of scripture, and wait, there's more context here, and that's a very disjointed idea that's been presented to you. And so it caused us to realize, man, there's a need for people to really look at the context of ideas within the scriptures so they can have the full story, and that's what we try to provide here. So when we get when certain movements of the faith, whether in regular mainstream Christian churches or in Messianic Torah observant Christian churches, all of them seem to focus solely on Exodus.
Yeah.
And that being the start of God's instructions for living in the priesthood. And that is not at all what Genesis says. Right. And it's not what Jubilees says. And it's not what even the prophets later, like we're going to read Malachi, says. Right? So there's all this greater context there. That if you have just a myopic view of just certain little areas, and you've been trained already to think, well, this was the origination of this idea, and this was the only time this idea was ever given to us, then it can maybe cause you to not see how many other places that idea, the context of that idea, is used and fleshed out, like Genesis 45.
Yeah.
What we're going to see next week or 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
And when we read about Joseph's life, and he's dealing with Levites.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of stuff in there that we just want to encourage you guys to test everything that we're putting forward, which is why we literally put the scriptures on the screen for you. Many times we may off the top of our head reference a scripture just as a reference or a short pairing, but anything that we're teaching in our videos, we're going to put on the screen for you to read with us. That, to me, is how we can be held accountable for what we're doing and what we're saying, is because we're showing you what we're reading and how we're coming to these conclusions. So
and that's also why a lot of times our videos, I promise you, we sit down with the goal of finishing a video in about an hour and 10 minutes. That's always our goal. Our videos do end up being longer because we are trying to give you just the straight up scriptures. We're trying to give you whole chapters, even some from this chapter and some from this chapter and this chapter over here, because they all line up, and give you the full context of things. So we may seem long-winded at times, but it's because we don't want anyone to, come to our videos and feel like they just listen to us and our thoughts on the scriptures and what we think about the scriptures is what they need to know. You guys need to know the scriptures, and you need to know some of the books that were removed from the scriptures that actually help you better understand them.
Which used to be called scriptures.
Right.
Mostly.
So that's why, a lot of times we end up going quite a long while on our videos, but it's because we really want to make sure that you're getting all of, the proper context that's going to not only back up our position on things, but also help you better understand it, give you more to go and test.
If we just wanted this to be Kingdom Portion's commentary on the scriptures, I would not have just embarrassed myself reading chapter 36. So this is, the whole point is we want to give you guys the scriptures. We want you guys to read them for yourselves, study these words of life for yourself, because it will give you understanding, because you'll find the context. And as we were always talking about, context creates comprehension. To comprehend the word allows you to explain it to your family member, your best friend, your neighbor, your girlfriend, whatever, so that you can then make disciples and that you can then defend your faith. So this is our motivating heart, guys. Let's look real quick in Jubilees chapter 31. We're still looking at Levi.
More context.
This is going to be in verse 1 and 2 real quick. It says, And on the new moon of the month, Jacob spoke to all the people of his house, saying, Purify yourselves and change your garments. Let us arise and go to Bethel, where I vowed a vow to him on the day when I fled from the face of Esau my brother, because he has been with me and brought me into this land. What happened? What are you doing?
Nothing.
What happened?
Nothing. I was just looking up at our thing.
Your quick movements startled me like you saw a spider or something. So
no.
Let's try this again. All right. And on the new moon of the month, hang on, let me give you a pause. And on the new moon of the month, Jacob spoke to all the people of his house, saying, Purify yourselves, change your garments. Let us arise and go up to Bethel, where I vowed a vow to him on the day when I fled from the face of Esau my brother, because he has been with me and brought me into this land in peace, and put you away the strange gods that are among you. And they gave up the strange gods, and that which was in their ears, which was on their necks, and the idols which Rachel stole from Laban her father, she gave wholly to Jacob. And he burnt and broke them to pieces and destroyed them, and hid them under an oak which is in the land of Shechem. Interesting.
Interesting.
So he burnt them and broke them and then buried them under a tree. But what's interesting, though, is it looks like we get some resolution to what those idols that Rachel stole. Right. So apparently this, by the way, it seems like this particular event is just a couple days later.
Yeah, this is all, in the same, I don't know, I would say maybe month time frame that this whole thing is going on.
Maybe.
I mean, from them leaving Laban to
Laban,
coming to Esau.
By the time Laban caught up to them, and then I think it was the next day, Esau was on his way to meet him. In
any case, when we very first read this, I thought, oh, wow, she had those idols that whole time. And then you reminded me, this is all like within a short time frame.
So it's not like she was using them.
Yeah.
But we've got other people that has strange idols in their ears and on their necks. So it makes me wonder if this was actually the sons of Israel, or was it the servants that were with them, that they had brought with them from Laban's house?
Yeah.
I don't know, to be honest with you. Because remember, back previous chapter, when he's afraid of the Shechemites, the land of Canaan, he's like, what if they come and attack me and my servants? Mm-hmm. Right? And he's telling that to his sons. So it makes me think because he had acquired people and cattle and possessions, male and female servants, as we read earlier, right? Maybe some of them were actually carrying with them some of the gods from across the Euphrates.
Well, we did just have Levi and Simeon kill all the men in that city, and they took the women and the children and the livestock. So we also have all the women and children.
That could be it, babe.
Coming out of, a Molech-loving culture.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That could be it. So now he's literally taking, wow, this is bigger implications than we thought, because now it's not just his family whom he's already trained in Torah, but now he's got
a
new
mixed
people.
Multitude.
He's got a mixed multitude, and he's got survivors.
Yes.
That he's having to train in the Torah to take to Bethel.
Yeah.
The house of God. So
let me drive that one home.
Yeah,
babe.
Let me say that again. They're going to Bethel. It's called the house of God. Guys, this is fascinating. Stick with us. We're going to still break down 35, right?
Promise.
Because it has to do with this, all right? There's so much there. Genesis is just a treasure trove of nuggets. And we hope you guys get excited about it as we do, because it's just so much fun.
It's another example of when you really understand the gospel of the kingdom of God, how, the whole scriptures just will read totally different to you when you have those glasses on, I should say. When you're reading through the glasses of the gospel of the kingdom, you'll see stuff that you didn't see before.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It really is. It makes the word come alive. Okay, so and as someone that like I've said before, I've aspiring author. I love to write, right? I love to craft a story, and the characters, the components, the plot, everything involved, the twist, all the fun stuff that you would put in a story. And when I see that there is a sub narrative layered into stuff that seems like a boring story.
Yeah.
It's just like the brilliance. It's amazing. It's so much respect for the Father.
Yeah.
From a writer's standpoint, that he can do this and do this repetitively all throughout his prophets.
He's a brilliant author.
Oh my goodness. I'm humbled. Okay, so the next one is Jubilees 31, and we'll go from 11 to verse 17. So in 11 it says, "And they came near to him, and he turned and kissed them, and embraced them both together. And the spirit of prophecy came down into his mouth, and he took Levi by his right hand." Real quick, we'll stop real quick and let you know this is. Remember, they were traveling down to see Isaac, and they took a couple pit stops along the way between Laban, Esau, and Bethel. But after they left Bethel, they finally do go down to see Isaac. Okay, and so Isaac actually is about to pray for Judah and Levi.
Yeah.
And so this is this moment we're getting right here. Verse 11: "They came near him, and he turned and kissed them." This is Isaac he's talking about, "and embraced them both together. And the spirit of prophecy came down into his mouth, and he took Levi by his right hand and Judah by his left. And he turned to Levi first, and then began to bless him first, and said unto him, May the God of all, the very Lord of all the ages, bless you and your children throughout all the ages. May the Lord give to you and to your seed greatness and great glory, and cause you and your seed from among all flesh to approach him to serve in his sanctuary as the angels of the presence and as the holy ones. Even as they shall the seed of your sons be for glory and greatness and holiness, and may he make them great unto all the ages. And they shall be judges and princes, and chiefs of all the seeds of the sons of Jacob. They shall speak the word of the Lord in righteousness, and they shall judge all his judgments in righteousness. And they shall declare my ways to Jacob, and my paths to Israel. The blessing of the Lord shall be given in their mouths, to bless all the seed of the beloved. The mother has called your name Levi, and justly has she called your name. You shall be joined to the Lord, and be the companions of all the sons of Jacob. Let his table be yours, and do you and your sons eat thereof. And may your table be full unto all generations, and your food fail not unto all generations. And let all who hate you fall down before you, and let all your adversaries be rooted out and perish. And blessed be he that blesses you, and cursed be every nation that curses you.
Yeah, and your food will not fail unto all the ages. Right from the very beginning, we see the Levitical priesthood associated with a family meal.
Yep. As we've said before many times in our Kingdom portions, guys, this whole concept of sacrifices, okay? You hear these terms, the Levitical system of animal sacrifices and all that. It's like she said, some people teach it's a punishment. Mm-hmm. Some people teach it was a temporary fix. Yep. Some people, no, guys, the whole point of all this is what Isaac's even explaining in the blessing. He's saying, look, your table, you and your sons eat thereof, because you'll be joined to the Lord, right? Yeah. So this is what the priests did, and what we'll read in later portions when we get into Exodus and Leviticus, is they literally came to the tent of meeting, had to purify themselves. They went to the tent of meeting, and they literally had a meal before the Lord, in the presence of the Lord. Okay, and this is why it says, may your table be full unto all generations, and may your food not fail unto all ages. Yeah. Because he's talking about them as a priesthood eating with the Father's presence. Yeah. This was a part of the whole concept of the priesthood. And it's not something where they just wasted animals and threw them away.
Right.
It was to have a meal with the Father. Like we've said before, the whole concept of sacrifices in the Bible, it is so simple. It's the Father saying, hey, I want to get together and have a meal with you. Here's the ingredients. Yeah. Here's the cooking instructions. And once you've done those, we'll sit, we'll chill, we'll have a great meal, and we'll commune with each other. And he calls that worship. Yeah. How easy is that? And
he ordained us chefs for all their generations.
That's right. We get master chefs.
We even have the master chefs.
With master recipes from the Father.
From the master.
Guys, religion has made this complicated. It's not complicated. It's beautiful, and it's the Father saying, "Look, you want to be? I want to be your God. You want to be my children. Yeah. I would love to be your Father. Let's have a meal together." That's what you do when you go visit family. I mean, Thanksgiving was last weekend, right? Yeah. So we people get together. They had a meal, and that's what the entire get together was focused around, was the meal. Yeah. It's the same thing that we have the feasts of the Lord listed in Leviticus 23 and other places, and we have these concepts of the Sabbath feast that they did, and all this concept. The marriage supper of the Lamb. Mm-hmm. This whole point about all this is that we're just going to get together. We're going to have a wonderful meal with our Father and His Son in the kingdom. Yeah. So this is all foreshadowing up to that. Anything else about this particular passage?
No, I want to encourage you guys actually probably to go ahead and, if you have the time, read Jubilees chapters like 29 through 33. There's just a lot. We had a real hard time narrowing down what we were going to pair from Jubilees for this particular portion. So if you want, just a little extra reading for the week that, you might find, I know you'll find edifying in relation to this particular portion, go read a few more chapters, because there's so much context there. There's more talked about with Levi and the priesthood being given to him, and some more stuff going on with Jacob. And there's just some awesome context in those few chapters, and we had a hard time narrowing them down. So go read them all if you have the chance.
So our next pairing that we're going to look into is going to be Malachi chapter 2. Mm-hmm. And do you want to read this one, or should I, sweetie?
Yeah, I can read. And what verses? Just 4 through 7?
I think that we're doing 4 through 7.
Okay.
So it should be, the 4 through 7.
Right. Then you will know that I have sent this commandment to you, that my covenant may continue with Levi, says the Lord of hosts. My covenant with him was one of life and peace, and I gave them to him as an object of reverence. So he revered me and stood in awe of my name. True instruction was in his mouth, and unrighteousness was not found on his lips. He walked with me in peace and uprightness, and he turned many back from iniquity. For the lips of a priest should preserve knowledge, and men should seek instruction from his mouth, for he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts.
Wow, it's beautiful.
So even right there, we have in the authorized canon, we do have verification that the Levitical priesthood wasn't some curse. That was a blessing given to Levi.
A covenant of life and peace. Yeah. And he had a heart for the Father. He turned many back from iniquity. Yeah. This dude was a preacher of
He
righteousness.
taught repentance.
This guy had a heart for the Father, man, and Father blessed him because of it.
Yeah.
And you know, I laugh because there was a movie that came out a few years ago. I think it was called Machine Gun Preacher, right? I know it sounds. I think it was, you know, as about as silly as it sounds, but I think the cover of the movie is literally a preacher with like machine guns, But basically, that's the picture I'm getting of Levi. He's like, he did what to our sister Dinah?
Wouldn't he also like be the Hebrew hammer?
Or yeah, well, that one's a little more satirical, but yes. So here we got Levi just sitting here going, "What?"
Yeah.
And he's looking at Simeon. He's like, "No.
Yeah.
These Canaanites, these guys who don't respect our Father, our Lord, our Father, our family, or our sister." No, we're going to go. They don't respect the law, but they're going to right now.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't executed judgment from the law.
Yeah.
And as a result, he's given the priesthood. And this is why in Malachi 2, during a time of rebellion in the house of Israel and Judah, the Father is reminding them with great promises, not just in Malachi, but also in Jeremiah and Isaiah, that his covenant with Levi is eternal and will not be broken, and will be picked back up when the circumstances have arisen properly, and there will, like Jeremiah 33 talks about, there will never fail to be a Levite before him offering animal sacrifices.
Read the end of Jeremiah 33, guys, if you just had a knee-jerk reaction to what he just said, because it's there.
I think we even paired it a few weeks ago.
We have,
The point is, you know, whoever started this idea of running around saying that animal sacrifices is against the Father's will, or that it's just something that he did temporarily because there was, quote unquote, no other way, or there was something. No, guys, he made, like we talked about last week, he made certain animals not to eat, and he made certain animals to eat.
Yeah. And
the ones that he made to eat, that he tells us, I made these as food for you, he uses them as food in this fellowship meal that we just talked about that's been called sacrifice. So wouldn't it be so appropriate, like the enemy, sweetie, to come in and take all these foundational terms, these foundational concepts within the scriptures that teach us how to interact with our Father, the creator of the universe, how to love him, how to walk with him, how to just enjoy fellowship with him, and make every single point within that process to be some kind of loathsome or laborious
or perverted in some sort of way.
I mean, that's the enemy that's coming in and causing people over time to question God's word when he says these animals are holy and good and these sacrifices, basically, like I said, these meals that I've asked you to get together and have with me, those are holy and good too. And some other dude comes in and says, I don't know about that.
Well, not just really that, but then we have the other side of the spectrum where the enemy's people also counterfeit that system and do their own forms of perverted sacrifice
with humans, right? Exactly.
And they sacrifice animals too.
That's
I
true.
mean, it's a whole thing in the occult, and it's a counterfeit. It's taking what was meant to be good and wholesome and worship of the one true God, and turning it into this perverted way to worship the fallen one, or whatever you want to call him.
Several years ago, almost a long time ago now, I used to work at a hotel. And it was a big, big hotel.
You told me this story, yeah.
So there was a, what I just straight call them a cult. I mean, they have an actual name. I'm not going to put it up here because I don't want anyone to even research them. But there was a group that came into the hotel. They rented it out for the weekend. And there was, we're talking like lawyers and doctors, and like, we're not just talking normal people. Like a very select group of people.
Upper echelons.
Right. At least in their minds, they thought they were. They're not. If they're not part of the family, you're not truly in the in crowd. No. Anyway, but so get a part of Israel, guys. That's the family you need to be in. But these people, whom thought a lot of themselves, went under the moniker of some sort of Catholic-based Christian name. Okay, and they came in and rented out the convention center of this hotel for several days. And one of the days I show up to work and there's cattle cars out behind the convention center, and it smelled like live cattle, right? And so I walk into the manager of the front desk and I'm like, oh man, who brought in live animals in the convention center? What's going on? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, guys, there's live animals in the convention center. There's cattle car out back. And they're like, we didn't know about that. So come to find out, this group had one of the biggest convention rooms in the convention center attached to the hotel. Very large room, could accommodate probably 2,000 or 3,000 people. But they had asked all the servants of the hotel, all the waiters and everyone that was the audiovisual crew, everyone that was helping them with their convention for the weekend, that they be left alone, and they locked the doors to this big convention room for 4 hours. And these animals were brought in, and then the animals were not ever seen.
Yeah.
The animals were brought in, and then ice chests were taken out.
Yeah.
so and then the room emptied out with like 500 people dressed in white and black robes.
And meanwhile, Sean is the only guy standing around like, they just sacrificed some animals in there, guys. And they're like,
yeah,
no,
guys.
what? No.
The hotel staff is just oblivious. And I'm sitting there going, guys, they're sacrificing animals in there. Like, this is, I'm pretty sure it's against health code.
Yeah.
so it was pretty wild. But yeah, even in the modern times, you've got the occult still practicing these ways, because they're in their perverted own mind, they understand the power of it.
Yeah.
The Father has given us the good way to do that, and that's just to have a normal animal, one that's to meat,
Clean.
or a good meal, right? Prepare your hearts, prepare your bodies, get ready, enjoy your time with the Father. Just have a normal meal. We're already going to the grocery store and buying slaughtered animals that have been prepared for us already. So it's just the same concept that we see fleshed out in His Word through what's been called the priestly system from the Levites, and then all these sacrifices that are instructed. It's not a bad thing. It's a glorious, wonderful way that the Father's given us to worship Him. And what's the craziest part is He calls that worship.
Yeah.
Not raising your hands with a bunch of smoke and fog in a black room that's been darkened on a Sunday morning, right? You want to praise God with song and dance and whatever, that's fine. That's also in scriptures too. But the definition of the real word worship was the Levitical priesthood and animals, and that's something that will be reinstated when He returns.
And before the Levitical priesthood, we had the Melchizedek. We had Abraham saying when he took Isaac to sacrifice him, we're going to go worship. We don't ever see really another definition of worship given, anywhere in the Torah. That's the one spot. So there might be a difference between praise and worship. When we talk about going to a worship service, we have a certain, picture of that in our heads, but a more appropriate, more biblically accurate term might be a praise service as opposed to worship service. But, really caring about the, denotation of that particular word would probably get us into a bit of legalism. So we're not, militant about that or anything. But we just want to drive the point home that the sacrificial system wasn't this punishment, and it also wasn't a Band-Aid for sin. It was the form of worship that Father prescribed for His people. So, and
now, everyone, at this point, we want to go into Genesis 35, because as we talked about earlier, there was a ton of prophetic symbolism inside that chapter, and just we're excited to show it to you. So this is what we saw when we were reading this part of Genesis 35. So essentially, not only does the chapter just start out with more angelic activity, which I think is great, and we get the reaffirming of the name change that's happening, that that's going to happen for him, but verses 2 through 15, we get some really fun sequence of events, right? We
have the gospel of the kingdom of God here.
We really do. We do. And as always, that's why it's, kingdom in context, right? Because that's, we feel that the gospel of the kingdom of God is everywhere in the scriptures. And then it looks like the Father is using this part of Jacob's life and the events therein to mimic these big overarching ideas. Right. And that's just beautiful. So first one off the bat. You want to read it?
Yeah, well, we've got a little slide that we've prepared. So we've got the Father calls Jacob, who becomes Israel, back to Bethel, which means house of God.
That's right.
So we have Father is calling his people to
his house.
The house of God.
That's right.
We have Jacob telling his house to give up all their idols.
Purify themselves. Mm-hmm.
And we find out later from Peter that has a meaning when you say purify yourself.
That's right.
We also have a change of garments, which is an interesting
What
thing
are we going to get at the resurrection?
We get our robes of righteousness.
Our robes of righteousness, robes of white. It's a change of garment.
We're purified through the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
We, of course... one of the first
we get the promise of Jeremiah 31 through 34 with this new heart, with
Yes.
His laws written on our hearts, so therefore we will never do idolatry again.
Right.
Not even an accident.
Yeah.
So this is wonderful symbolism there.
Then we have, as they're actually traveling to Bethel, we have all the surrounding nations, as a result of what we saw from Levi and Simeon and their actions, all the nations surrounding them have a terror, they have a fear of the Lord upon them. So they're protected basically
right.
from anyone attacking them as they go to the house of God because of the fear of the Lord that's placed on these people.
Because at the return of the Messiah, on the day of the Lord, when we're resurrected, Zephaniah 1 tells us a great dread and terror falls on the people of the earth and the inhabitants of the earth because of what's going on, right? There's a day of darkness and gloom, a day of terror. It's because the Father is sending his Son with angels back to rout out the wicked from the land, so they can prepare the way for the house of God to sit down, which is New Jerusalem.
Right.
So this is where, the army of the battle of the Battle of Armageddon starts to happen. There's a whole bunch of other details there, but the nations of the world, there's this massive earthquake. All the cities of the world are being destroyed, and there will be terror on the people as we are going to the house of God
safely. Via the resurrection, we're going to be perfectly protected. And
there's a reason for that. Isaiah 26:20 tells us specifically, after we're resurrected, we're taken to our rooms that have been prepared for us to be stored away from the indignation that's happening on the earth.
Right.
So it's purposeful.
Yeah. So then we have Jacob arriving in Bethel.
Yeah.
He builds an altar.
That's right.
We would assume he performs a sacrifice upon that altar, has a meal with the Father.
Yeah. Because this is consistent with the pattern for the priests, right? They build an altar and worship the Lord there. That means they had an actual sacrificial meal there.
What are we waiting for?
The marriage supper of the Lamb, which happens inside the New Jerusalem, which is our house of God, our Bethel.
I'm sure there will be an altar there.
That's right.
We have God appearing to Jacob when he comes to Bethel and he changes his name.
That's right.
We're going to receive new names.
That's right.
When we enter into the New Jerusalem.
I think it's Revelation 2.
Yes, yeah. And of course we have God revealing himself to us through the New Jerusalem. We have God reaffirming the covenant with Jacob
during this moment,
and mentioning the promises of the covenant again. So once we're in the New Jerusalem, we're going to be receiving those promises
because we are actively being initiated into the new covenants, according to the context of Jeremiah 31, which is this, in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 5 through 8. Which is this idea of it's a reaffirming of the original covenant that we could not do perfectly because we were in corrupted bodies. Now that we got these resurrected, perfected bodies, we can do the terms of the covenant and live forever.
Yeah.
So it's the moment we get inducted in with our new resurrection bodies into the new covenant is God reaffirming the original covenant. Just like he does with Jacob here, he's reaffirming the covenant that was originally given already. So
and then we have Jacob erecting a stone pillar. And for us, the symbolism there was, the New Jerusalem is going to stand like a pillar on the plane of the earth.
It's literally made of gemstones.
Made of gemstones, precious stones.
Yeah, and it's a huge pillar that's 1,500 miles tall that everyone across the planet of the earth will see. And even metaphorically, the inhabitants are considered as pillars in the house of God, according to Revelation 2.
Yeah, pillars of righteousness.
So it's, all the symbolism is there. And we have and in sequence.
Right.
And in sequence.
All in sequence.
It's in the right order of events.
As soon as we started reading this chapter, I'm like, wait a minute. He told them to give up their idols. He told them to purify themselves. And they changed their clothes. This is and so as we read the rest of the chapter, we just saw it flow more and more and more. Oh my gosh, this is prophetically describing us entering into, the New Jerusalem and the New Covenant.
It's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, and then we got into some really interesting imagery and symbolism with Rachel, which would you like to explain?
Well, Rachel is, idiomatically here in Genesis 35, verses 16 through 18. We can easily look this as being symbolism for Yeshua being born on the earth, and then also being glorified and taken to the right hand of the Father. Because it says she bore Benjamin, but she didn't call him that. Right. She called him Ben-Oni, which means son of sorrow. Right? Well, the original Son of God came and there was sorrow involved because he sacrificed his life and was murdered and betrayed, right? And so there was a lot of sorrow involved. But the Father steps in, Jacob in this story steps in and says, no, I'm not going to name him Ben-Oni, I'm going to name him Benjamin, which means son of my right hand. Yeah. So Yeshua, at his ascension and glorification from his resurrection, now is at the right hand of the Father. He is the Son of the Father who's now at the right hand. So he is the Son of the right hand. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. And then in Genesis 35:8, we see, this is just a little side mention, but the daughter Deborah, or the assistant to Rebecca, I think it was, her name was Deborah, if I got that right. she dies, and they're in Bethel and Judges. But there's also another Deborah in the book of Judges, chapter 4, who is judging at Bethel.
Yeah.
So you've got, I think that's fascinating.
Sean has talked before about Bethel being a place where there seems to be a lot of significant
There's
stuff
a lot of
happening.
stuff going on. A lot of angelic activity happening at Bethel. Literally, it was called the house of God because of that.
Right.
So to me, it's my theory that this is the original literal geographical spot of the Garden of Eden. Could be wrong, but that's where my research has led me so far. Genesis 35, 23 through 26. We also have a reaffirmation of all the sons that were born, which are going to be all these names that were given are the same names that we see on the New Jerusalem on the gates of Zion.
Yeah, with Rachel, Sean and I, we saw some, imagery of this. Paul calls it our mother above, Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem.
Galatians 4:26.
There's a lot of narrative throughout the whole book where you see the Father comforting Zion and telling her that she's in sorrow now, but she's going to be in joy. He's promising her she's going to have children, and those children are going to be us, those of us who are resurrected, Yeshua being the first fruits of that, being the firstborn son of Zion. So we have this other imagery going on with Rachel where she's even being comforted in her childbirth/death by a woman saying, yeah, you're dying in childbirth right now, but rejoice, you have another son. So there's this other bit, and we couldn't draw this metaphor all the way through, obviously, but we saw a twinge.
There's a lot of similarities.
We saw a twinge there of, the Zion imagery of this barren woman who hasn't given birth, and she's waiting, and she's going to travail.
That's right.
And in that travail is going to come this great joy, because it's that travail is the resurrection, that, the earth giving birth to the departed spirits, as Isaiah puts it.
So as a quick reference for anyone who might be interested in that, we haven't actually done a full-on video on that yet, but from everything she was just saying, if you want to study that on your own, I would strongly recommend Isaiah 26, verses 19 through 21, Isaiah 49, verses 13 through the end of the chapter, Isaiah 52, Isaiah 54, Isaiah 60, Isaiah 62, verses 1 through 5, and also Isaiah 66, verses 7 through 9. So you guys can rewind that at will if you
want to better understand why we saw the imagery that we saw there. If you read all those chapters that Sean just gave you, you'll get what we're talking about.
And Paul refers to Zion above, Mother Jerusalem above, as mother above in Galatians 4:26. So this is there's a lot of symbolism there. So, all right. Lastly, let's get to our New Testament, our Brit Hadashah pairings, because these are also extremely, in our opinion, they're relevant to what we're talking about here today.
Specifically with chapter 35 and the prophetic foreshadowing that we just pointed out to you with all of that whole series of events. So we found a couple things we thought were appropriate for those.
All right. You want to read this one?
Yeah.
It's 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 22 and 23.
Since you have, in obedience to the truth, purified your souls for a sincere love of the brethren, fervently love one another from the heart, for you have been born again, not of seed which is perishable, but imperishable, that is, through the living and enduring word of God. So here we have, in obedience to the truth. And what does the word say the truth is? That's his word.
That's right.
In obedience to the truth, you've purified your souls for sincere love of the brethren. Then we have him talking about the promise of being born again.
That's right.
Of imperishable, incorruptible seed we shall be.
That's right. Yeah, so you get a lot of symbolism that we just talked about in Genesis 35 as well. And so then our next one here is going to be in Revelation 14, and I believe this is in... Revelation, 14:17?
Yes, a passage I'm sure many of you know by heart, a verse I should say.
Yeah.
But and you'll see why we picked this based on what we just read in Genesis 35.
And we actually said the wrong number, baby. It's Revelation 22.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're right.
Revelation 22 verse
14,
17.
I thought. It's 22:14.
Yes. Yeah. 22:14 through 17. We'll get this right at some point. All right, so it says, "Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter by the gates into the city. Outside of the dogs, the sorcerers, the immoral persons, the murderers, and the idolaters, everyone who loves and practices lying. I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. The Spirit and the bride say, 'Come,' and let the one who hears say, 'Come.' Let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who wishes to take the water of life without cost."
So it's 22:14 through 17.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, yeah. We just got our numbers jumbled up, but yeah, 22:14 through 17.
Yeah, so obviously we've got the washing of the garments there. We've got that symbolism going on. So washing of garments, purifying yourselves, that is all likened to obedience to the word of the Father. So it's not just a physical, yes, we should be clean and we should have good hygiene, but that's not what these verses are talking about. They're talking about obedience.
That's right. Yeah, and in a very real way, very tangible, practical way, back during the Levitical priesthood, when the temple was available, there was a process in the Day of Atonement where they would stop in the middle of it, change their clothes and wash off, and then go do the rest of it. So that was literally a command.
Yeah.
And then of course the whole cleanliness laws, as far as when you came to the Father, you had to be in a certain state, which is what we saw Jacob actually enforcing.
Yeah.
Which I think is
fascinating. Before they go to the house of God.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And to me, it would just go to show, like we tried to explain in the last week, that Jacob himself was being trained in the priesthood.
Yeah.
That's why they were teaching him. He learned to write. He wasn't like Esau, who was just hunting out all the time. So he was a little different. And so because he needed to know, in my opinion, he's being groomed for the priesthood, which is why we see him doing priestly duties, right. even little stuff like preparing the people properly to go to the house of God.
Right.
So that's fascinating to me. And guess what? When he gets there, angels show up.
Yeah.
More things happen. Yeah. More crazy stuff happens.
He's given his new name.
It's like he just Babe Ruth pointing to left field. Hey, you guys, you want to see some angels? Watch this. Let's go to Bethel. I'll show you some angels. You know what I mean? It's just wild. That kind of accuracy, if you will. It's like he's just like, I need to get down to Bethel. This is where I saw him the first time, and he promised to be with me. And let's go down there again. Oh, we see him again.
Yeah.
So it'd be hard for me to leave.
Right. Well, and also notice that Jacob he brings up again the promise he made to God in return. Mm-hmm. And I promised him. So let's not forget, guys, that, a relationship is a two-way street. It's not just God blessing Jacob and right. Jacob doesn't do anything in return. Jacob's behavior was worthy of those blessings. And so our prayer for ourselves and everyone's prayer should be that our behavior is worthy of the Father's blessings. Whatever those blessings look like, it's not even about material, monetary stuff, but, the blessing of, understanding the gospel of the kingdom for me is... There's no price for it. That's invaluable. So,
and the best way that our behavior can be counted as worthy, according to Jesus, is to keep the commandments of God. Yeah. To learn them, to study them, to know them, to practice them in your life. And there's a reason why it's called practicing righteousness. Yeah. Because he knows we're going to fail. That was why a priesthood was always around to make atonement for folks when they failed. Thankfully, we, through Jesus, Yeshua of Nazareth, have a eternal high priest sitting at the right hand of the Father, who is our high priest, and therefore we can confess our sins so that he's faithful and just, so he'll cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Mm. And in that moment, we can then continue to practice the commandments and know that when we mess up, we have a high priest who mediates to us, to the Father, for us to the Father. So I just want to encourage you guys with that. That is how, that is, just something that I would love for everyone to always remember, that this, we can read about the patriarchs, how they were following the ways of the Father, how they were, even around all the stress in their life, they were trying to figure out a way to follow the Father, what God wanted for them, how to retain their character and integrity in following the Father amidst challenges in their life, even amidst, like last week we had all the father-in-law drama, baby mama drama. Now we've got new city drama, like he just moved into a new neighborhood and he's got drama with the neighbors, so through all this stuff, Jacob is trying to follow the ways of the Father. And that's what we can do as well, no matter what circumstance we're in, because to us, this is how we find ourselves walking with the Father. This is how Scripture defines walking with the Father, right? Whether we're persecuted or whether life is good at the moment, we're continuing to learn his ways so that we can practice his ways. And then the promise to us, part of this covenant, that we are in with Israel, with Jacob, that we've been reading about, is that at the resurrection, those ways that we've been practicing are then imprinted on us, and so that we never fail to do them, and we'll always do them. And it's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a great promise. So it's our blessed hope. Anything, concluding remarks, sweetie?
As always, if you made it this far, thank you for watching all the way through. If you want to bless others, one of the best ways to do that is to get us into the algorithms. So give us a like, give us a share, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. If you disagreed with anything, if you didn't like the video, we're not offended if you put the thumbs down. Leave some comments. We'll try to get to every comment. We'll try to get to every edifying comment that we can. Sometimes there are comments that seem to come out of left field and we have no idea what the person is talking about. And we don't ignore it to be rude, but we ignore it because we really try to pick our battles wisely. So if you have, even if what you want to ask might not be edifying by your terms, if it's a question you have, let us know and we'll try to answer it. And I just want to remind everyone, our catchphrase here is context creates comprehension, and our heart is for you to comprehend the scriptures. It's a little different than just understanding them. Like Sean said earlier, when you comprehend them, you can teach them to others, you can deal with objections, you can deal with your own confusions and things. If you keep everything in the context of the kingdom, you're going to have a real easy time understanding things and teaching it to others. So we just appreciate you guys.
Yeah, well said, sweetie. Thank you for joining me again this week.
Of course. Every week. Every day.
Thank you guys for watching and for sticking with us if you have this far. We hope that you have a great week. And just come back and see us again next week here on Kingdom Portions.
Bye, guys. Have a good week.